All right, we are back and we are connected with Marc Ganis, president of SportsCorp Limited. He's been helping guide us through the stadium talks, and it's great to have you back on.
Marc, great to be here.
Yeah, it's always good to see you taking advantage of kind of your insider knowledge as we all kind of navigate through this. You've been part of these stadium negotiations, and you've told us before the importance of the price tag, right? The Pagulas has said a downtown stadium would cost close to $1 billion more than one in Orchard Park. But as we mentioned, the Buffalo Common Council now coming out and saying the city needs to be considered. You've got a plot of land that's almost 90% owned by the city. We've been showing our viewers some renderings. Again, not a design proposal, but it looks pretty sweet. Based on your insight, do you think it's a foregone conclusion right now that this new stadium is going to be down in Orchard Park where the Pagulas want it? Or is there a strong case to be made about having one downtown?
Well, if there's going to be a strong case to have it downtown, someone's going to have to come up with the additional costs associated with putting it downtown. So if there is $1 billion additional cost, and we haven't even talked about how much longer it might take to build it, so there might be some additional costs with the time delay. If the government is willing to put up all of that additional money, it becomes something that is worth talking about. But unless the government's willing to put up that additional money, then there really shouldn't be anything much to talk about.
Marc, we're wondering because other cities, even smaller ones, have managed to get downtown stadiums like Indianapolis. It's more than just a football venue. Couldn't that be a potential blueprint for what Buffalo could do?
The reason that the Indianapolis Stadium is built downtown is because it's effectively part of the convention center facilities. Indianapolis already had a very significant history of amateur sports and holding other events. The NCAA is headquartered there. They've held the Pan American Games there. So what the stadium became was an additional piece. Remember, this is the second stadium in Indianapolis. You had the Hoosier Dome first, and now this is the second stadium. The Hoosier Dome was also downtown, so it wasn't like they were changing sites, and it was being used, the new stadium being used for many of the same purposes as the original Hoosier Dome. We're talking about something completely different in Buffalo. We're talking about effectively a football-only stadium that would go downtown versus the suburbs, rather than one piece of what Indianapolis was able to convey to the NCAA and many other parties to come to Indianapolis. And this was a substitute stadium for the Hoosier Dome, that Lucas Oil Stadium. That's not the same situation in Buffalo, and I think it's highly unlikely that the infrastructure that already existed in Indianapolis would ever really exist in Buffalo.
Hey, Marc, it shouldn't surprise anyone that, Buffalo lawmakers want to build a stadium in Buffalo, these city council members. Businesses here in the city would obviously get way more out of that than businesses in Orchard Park. Conversely, you have to bet Orchard Park leaders would like for the stadium to be built there. Not to mention the push and pull of leaders at the state level and at the county level. You just have a lot of different interests kind of colliding when we talk about where this stadium is going to go. How do all of those different political pressures play into how this ultimate decision ends up happening? What in your experience in other places can we take away from that?
They have to come together. They have to look at it as a region, not my block, my city, my neighborhood, my ward. You can't look at it that way when you're a market the size of Buffalo that already has so many challenges. You've got to look at this in a much broader perspective. Think of it as Western New York, not just the city limits of Buffalo, or the city limits of Orchard Park for that matter. And if that doesn't happen, then we're looking at a situation where you might get gridlock, you might get paralysis of analysis, and lose what you currently have and the advantages that the Western New York region has to retain the bills on a long-term basis.
We always appreciate you talking us through these things. Marc Ganis, president of SportsCorp, thanks again for being here.